Welcome to Windows on the World. I'm Mark Windows. We have cutting-edge news, empowering information and no conspiracy theories. We will be watching those who are watching us, so we want you to be part of the show, so do phone in. We will be covering a wide variety of interlinked and fascinating subjects on this and future shows. The People's Voice TV are showing G. Edward Griffin and Michael Murphy's films What on Earth Are They Spraying? And the follow-up, Why on the World Are They Spraying? The films are about a branch of geoengineering, also known as chemtrails. The evidence of massive geoengineering chemtrailing programmes has sparked worldwide concern, not just amongst alternative researchers, but also by the scientific research community. This practice is known as solar radiation management and also stratospheric aerosol spraying. It is covered in government documents and in reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and Council for Foreign Relations. These persistent chemtrails, according to official documents, contain fine particulate aluminium plus radioactive isotopes such as strontium and barium. The health hazards of aluminium have been well documented. Many leading health professionals, including Dr. Russell Blaylock, have spoken out about the dangers of nanoparticulate aluminium, which stays in the respiratory tract and is a dangerous neurotoxin, which is known to cause Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The official term, solar radiation management, refers to the reflecting of the sun's rays into the upper atmosphere to combat solar flaring and global warming through spraying aluminium oxide particles from planes. Geoengineering is referred to as an alternative to taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, who recently published their 2013 document, known as AR5. Some researchers, however, believe this spraying is also connected to global depopulation due to the toxicity of the materials being sprayed. This is a massive subject and one that has been mostly kept out of the mainstream media. For those who know nothing of the subject, please stay tuned. For those who have information on the subject, please phone in. This video we are about to show gives evidence and information on geoengineering and also global weather modification programmes. After this, we will bring in today's studio guests. Remember, this is the People's Voice, so we want you to phone in. Although weather modification has been going on for the best part of a century, this phenomenon has really taken hold of our skies since the mid-90s. Oxford Dictionary definition of chemtrail: a visible trail left in the sky by an aircraft and believed by some to consist of chemical or biological agents released as part of a covert operation. This from Veterans Today. Contrary to rumours of conspiracy theory, the Department of Defence first published a document called CHEMTRAILS in 1990 as the title to a chemistry course for new pilots attending the US Air Force Academy. The course content, however, suggests possible methods for manipulation of the Earth's atmospheric chemistry and conductivity, and of course could be construed as a course requirement for pilots who could be engaged in deploying chemicals into the atmosphere. These are not contrails which quickly evaporate, but persistent trails which slowly spread out and leave a haze which covers the sky and particularly the path of the sun. This has led to a phenomena now called global dimming. The trails have been found to contain particulate aluminium and radioactive isotopes such as strontium and barium. There has been no mainstream disclosure of this activity, which is a worldwide phenomenon. It is especially prevalent in NATO countries. Soil samples taken in both the US and Britain reveal way over safe levels of particulate aluminium. This is not the natural aluminium formed in soil. The official reasons for this activity as a proposed and not yet officially implemented strategy is to combat climate change under the official term solar radiation management. This aspect is already in the public domain through mainstream newspapers. Plans to implement stratospheric aerosol geoengineering have been around since at least 1991, with reports of its activity beginning to surface in the mid-90s. The US Hughes aircraft patent, March 26, 1991, called Stratospheric Wells-Back Seeding for Reduction of Global Warming. Steve Hamburg, Chief Scientist for Environmental Defence Fund, EDF, and co-chair of SRMGI, said solar radiation management could be potentially risky when large-scale experiments of this technique are deployed in the real world. Solar radiation management has 3 essential characteristics, notes the International Risk Governance Council, IRGC. It is cheap, fast and imperfect. The World Meteorological Organization states currently there are dozens of nations operating hundreds of weather modification projects. The recent Royal Society funded Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, SRMGI, states under Chatham House rules, which means we know this was said but not who said it, quote, involve the general public because A, they pay for it, B, they have the power to stop it, keep them informed on what geoengineering is for, but don't necessarily ask their permission. Citing geoengineer David Keith, the IRGC explains that by injecting 13,000 tonnes of sulfate aerosol into the stratosphere on a daily basis, they would offset the radiative effects of a doubling of atmospheric CO2 concentrations. This compares to having to remove 225 million tonnes per day of CO2 from the atmosphere for 25 years, which their own panel admits they do not know how to do. In addition to warning policymakers in its summary that chemtrails must continue, the IPCC also denies that such programmes exist. Buried within Chapter 7 of their report, the IPCC simply states SRM methods are unimplemented and untested. However, the IPCC also states if SRM were terminated for any reason, there is high confidence that global surface temperatures would rise very rapidly. The Solar Radiation Management Governance stated it could be potentially risky when large-scale experiments of this technique are deployed in the real world. Another study published in July 2010 by the United States Government Accountability Office stated that not one geoengineering technique is safe and their implementation could cause more damage than the supposed catastrophe they intend to avoid. This study concluded that climate engineering technologies do not now offer a viable response to global climate change. Even Greenpeace's chief UK scientist, a staunch advocate for the case of man-made global warming, Doug Parr, has slammed attempts to geoengineer the planet as outlandish and dangerous. Geoengineering is also covered in documents available online entitled Developing an International Framework for Geoengineering by the Council for Foreign Relations. Aerosol spraying on the public is in violation of the 1978 Environmental Modification Treaty. US Environmental Protection Agency says that exposure to airborne particulate matter is an environmental health risk of global proportions. Welcome back to the People's Voice.tv. I'm Mark Windows. This is Windows on the World. You can phone us on 0203 714 2700. Now, on the sofa today, we have researcher, filmmaker and event organiser Jonothan Adams. Jonothan has researched the subject of geoengineering and the chemtrail phenomenon. His company, Pentos Films, cover ancient history, geopolitics, esoteric knowledge and much more. Jonathan, welcome to Windows on the World.
Mark, thank you very much.
It's great to have you in. Now, your research took you into the area of chemtrails, but just tell us a bit about your background.
Well, I've been a filmmaker for the best part of 25 years, working in mainstream film and TV in the early days. Yeah. More recently, in the last 3 or 4 years or so, I've been working in my incarnation as Pentos TV, presenting what you might call esoterica, so lost and ancient civilizations, ancient knowledge, giants, the kind of hidden history, you might say.
Well, that's great. We're just going to go to a VT of you now, Jonathan. This was shot at one of your conferences, and we'll see you in action.
One of the conclusions I've reached is that this top-down hierarchy has failed. You know, in the same way that consumer capitalism has failed, it can't work. It's not sustainable. We have to think of new ways of doing things. And one of the things that we can do, and this is part and parcel of what my good friend Litmus will be talking about tonight, is to regain our own power. We've always had it, we've just forgotten that we've had it. And this is where the Freeman movement, Freeman on the Land movement, this is where Lawful Rebellion is all about, just standing up and saying, actually, no, we're not going to do it your way anymore. You've got it wrong, we're going to go. And again, you see, this is where the communication thing comes in. For the time being, we can still use the internet. They're trying very hard to squeeze us, so that's not going to be as easy as it used to be. But communicating amongst ourselves, entwined networks. I'm trying not to say internet, but interconnected networks.
I think that's very important. We have to invent a non-written form of communication. We have to become telepathic in some space.
We need to, we really need to rediscover those abilities. I think that's something that Raymond was speaking about earlier today in his Feng Shui talk. This idea of the Kali Yuga, the ancient times where we could fly, where we were telepathic, where we could manifest like that. We've lost that. We've got technology, but you've got to plug the bugger in and learn how to work it, you know. And pay for it, absolutely. How much easier if you could just go, ting, you know, so...
That's great, Jonathan. So you've been involved in, well, a truth movement for quite a number of years, haven't you?
Yeah, I would say that it's. I'm hesitant to hang names on things, but I would say yes. I've been researching beneath the surface, shall we say, for quite a long time. Chemtrailing first came across my radar, I suppose, about 10 years ago, and initially I thought it was a bit of an oddity, and I started looking up a lot more, and I think that's where a lot of people begin. You just start looking up at the skies, and it doesn't take very long, particularly these days, to see that something's not quite right. I'm hesitant to fall into the kind of the Chicken Little, the sky's falling, running around screaming about it, but I do think that it bears closer scrutiny, and kind of alarm bells are going off because we're not getting any dialogue out of people like the Met Office, we're not getting any dialogue out of the aviation industry, certainly not the military, but anybody who's gone out any day in Europe or the US or Australia or Canada and looked up in the skies, you can see something's not right.
This is a very interesting point, because what seems to be happening is there's a denial that it is actually happening, yet we're seeing it. And the latest IPCC report actually kind of does avert to that. It says that if solar radiation management was stopped, global warming would increase. And then it kind of contradicts itself. It's a very contradictory and ambiguous document in some ways. Are you familiar with this latest report?
It was come as a bit of a surprise to me today, because I saw it for the first time when you showed it to me, but it's very interesting, not least because it seems to be a tacit admission that it has been going on all along, despite all the protestations that it was just a plan for the future. So that in itself as an admission is very, very interesting. How they next intend to dress that up as solar radiation management, protecting from global warming or climate change, as it's been rebranded, because obviously for most of us the winters are getting colder, not warmer, is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see what they say, as people who've seen what in the world and why in the world will know. There are people who spend a lot of their time going around the world promoting the notion that geoengineering is a grim necessity, the lesser of two evils, if you like, to protect us from man-made climate change. The bottom line, though, is that there isn't any hard and fast evidence to prove that any change in the climate is anthropogenic, so therefore caused by man.
Yeah, there's been no change for the past 17 years, and that's a fact. We know that for a fact. Obviously, we've got the IPCC report here. But we also know from the Climate Research Unit at East Anglia that climatologists broke the law by illegally withholding information from legitimate freedom of information requests that have been filed with the Climate Research Unit. There's people who've worked for the IPCC. Mike Hume, ex-IPCC, claims, he says, claims such as 2,500 scientists have reached a consensus that human activities are having a significant influence on the climate are disingenuous. Giving the impression that the IPCC consensus means everyone agrees with everyone else is unhelpful. It doesn't reflect the uncertain exploration and sometimes contested nature of scientific knowledge. There's one from Richard Toll, John Christie. These are all ex-IPCC panellists, you know.
Oh, well, indeed, and also, you know, you take somebody who was as popular from our day as ever there was as a kind of a wheel-out pundit on environmental issues, David Bellamy, who was a very widely respected environmental scientist, until he had the temerity to stand up and say, actually, no, global warming is far from being proven, and I think we need to look at it much more closely. And he was whipped off faster than you can say knife.
He was summarily dismissed, basically, from the BBC, wasn't
he? Absolutely, and he really didn't didn't have any exposure again. So I think we need to look at the broader issue of programming, and I use the term in its broadest possible sense, in the sense of getting people to believe a particular set of facts that aren't necessarily supported by evidence. And when you start looking at the other corollary aspects, like for instance the carbon offset trading, where there's a financial benefit to be had from this whole kind of man-made climate change thing, and then also to see even something as prosaic as emission controls. The aviation industry is exempt from emission controls, and yet we're beaten over the head every day about catalytic converters for cars, about what your carbon emissions are. So there's clearly a disparity even there that bears closer scrutiny.
It's quite interesting because we actually contacted the Department of Transport for a comment on basically aviation pollution. And we told them about the films, what in the world and why in the world is it spraying? And we got in touch with the lady there, and she said she'd email us back. She hasn't. We're going to give them another chance. So on the next show, we'll try and chase them up for that. But they have had a week, and the lady did say she was going to send it straight away. So we don't know what's happened there. But as far as this debate about global warming, as they keep saying, the science is far from settled. We've got all the information here from the IPCC report, the 2013, which has just come out. But they seem to be openly admitting to geoengineering now. As I say, it's a very ambiguous thing. But when did you start noticing this changing in the skies? Because this is quite important.
As I say, I first came across the issue probably 10 years ago. I didn't pay as close attention then as I do now. But I suppose gradually over the years I've started looking up more, and that's really what it comes down to, just looking up at the skies. And you can't help, as soon as you do start looking up, you do start to see that there's something going on. The questions are, and they remain, what is it that's going on, who's doing it, and why? And for the time being, those questions are still unanswered. Max, who I know is coming on shortly, has done a great deal more research into this than I have, and knows a lot more about who the usual suspects are, should we say. But the jury's still out. It's not proven. All that we know with any degree of certainty is that something's going on. And that's very much what my film is about. I'm making a film called Let's Talk About the Weather, which is very much looking at the issue of geoengineering, climate control, solar radiation management, all the rest of it, and including what the Met Office now call persistent contrails, because they're willfully avoiding the issue by using the moniker chemtrailing. But from a UK-European perspective, the What in the World and Why in the World films were very much for an American audience. I want to make a film that addresses issues from a UK and European perspective. And so if anybody who's watching or anybody gets in touch with you who's particularly, I'm interested in talking to people from within the machine, so to speak. So anybody in aviation, anybody in government, Met Office, military I'd love to talk to, but I'm acutely aware that they're very nervous about talking to media. And I don't want to make a scare film. I want to make a film that is a sober analysis of the issue to hopefully open up some channels of communication. Because I do think that there are good and honourable people working within those industries and those areas who aren't necessarily aware of the bigger picture of what they're doing, or maybe are just becoming aware and aren't very comfortable with it. Because the whole of this always operates on a basis of compartmentalisation. So you do your little bit, you don't look to either side, you clock off and collect your paycheck. And I think a lot of people are waking up now and going, actually, I'm not really comfortable with that anymore. So if anybody gets in touch and would like to talk to me, I can guarantee their anonymity if that's necessary. But I'm very keen to talk to them and maybe include them in the film. So.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we were down at the Chemtrails Awareness Day on November the 3rd, and we've got some videos coming up from that. And we did actually talk to a pilot, and he was in denial to start with. But then when we started pointing a few things out to him, he was just very, very scared of losing his job, basically. And I think this is the problem we've got. We've got to stand up, we've got to start saying, look, this is our health, our children's health, our grandchildren's health that's going to suffer here. Spraying of aluminium in the skies, which is what is proposed and obviously in some way implemented if our assumptions are correct, which I believe they are. I mean, I'd like to hear what everybody else has got there to say about this, because if we can get people phoning in with their experience and whether they're aware of this phenomenon, because all you have to do now is look up to the skies, basically. These are called persistent contrails. They don't disappear. They spread out. They form a milky haze over the sky, and they are not contrails. So we need to at first be asking what exactly they're doing. I mean, our studies have taken us into a lot of different areas of what this is really about, from the solar radiation management side to things that are probably a little more scary in some ways. But if we start out with getting everyone to look up to the skies and asking what's going on, because we didn't get skies like this 10 years ago.
No, it's perfectly true. And you know, I think there's room for all theories and all comers to come and you know, contribute to the debate. And I do want to see it as a debate. You know, the problem at the moment, it's entirely one-sided. It's only independent researchers that are looking and talking about this. And as you say, you know, it's only really under great, I would say, great pressure from the alternative scene, if you like, the alternative researchers, that even that the Met Office have even now given a term. They now talk about persistent contrails. And you've got to ask the question, is this an effort to explain it away so that there's no further questions asked about it? Because it doesn't take very much research to see that as an explanation for something that's been going on for quite a while. It just doesn't hold water. You know?
No, because the NASA footage actually was shown quite recently, saying that these persistent contrails were actually blocking a lot of the sunlight out. I mean, there is an estimate of 20%
global dimming.
Loss of sunlight. Yes,
yeah.
Global dimming. The global dimming phenomenon, which you can look up on Wikipedia, it's all there.
It's happening. Well, interestingly, I mean, as a corollary to that, they've kicked certainly the UK and Western European solar market into the ditch, because, you know, people are investing all this money in solar panels on the roof and there's no sunshine, you know, or so little as to make it hardly worth doing. So yes, it's an issue, it's real and it's happening. And even if it's only a question of saying, well, actually, you know, you need to be subject to emission controls so that you're not chugging out particulates into the skies over heavily populated areas, that's a good place to start. Yeah. And, you know, and even if you're a pilot or an aviation worker working, you know, on jetliners that are chucking all this crap out into the sky, let's have a conversation about that at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'd love you to phone in if you know anything about this phenomenon, or you've been researching it, or you're new to it and are sceptical. It's 0203 714 2700. And we're waiting for your calls. This is Windows on the World. I've got Jonothan Adams with me, and we're talking about geoengineering, or the phenomenon called chemtrails. Now, Jonathan, I've found that the people are at first in slight denial about this, and when it's pointed out to them and they start looking, they can train their eyes, can't they, to actually what's going on. And I think that's a very important thing.
Well, again, you know, it's simply a case of looking up. Most people lead busy lives, and if you do look up, it's a glance and you're getting on with what you're doing. But if you do get time and you see a plane going overhead, just spend 5 or 10 minutes, sit down and just watch. Because if it's an ordinary contrail, the vapor trail behind it, and these only form above 10,000 feet anyway, if it's an ordinary contrail, it'll be kind of that much in the sky, and then it'll move along with the plane and disappear. If it's not, it will stay, persist, and spread out. And what happens, particularly in the wintertime, it seems, is you get up very early in the morning, you have a beautiful, clear, sunny day, a couple of planes go over, by mid-morning it's completely hazy and overcast. And I even noticed in the summer that even when you know, in terms of light, it seemed bright enough, it was actually cold. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of heat.
Things really started getting a bit strange about 2010, I remember. When the chemtrailing got particularly heavy. You can see it will start about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then it starts spreading out. But there was this strange phenomenon, I don't know whether you noticed in like 2010, it was getting very cold about 5 o'clock in the evening, even though it was midsummer. That was very strange, but I noticed that it was definitely the heaviest I'd seen was around 2010 and onwards. Would you say that?
It seemed to be getting progressively heavier. Then there seemed to be a kind of a sudden surge in interest in the subject around that time, and then they seemed to switch to night spraying. Now, if the excuse or the explanation is that you're spraying particulates in the upper atmosphere for solar radiation management, chaps, the sun's not shining at night. So if you're going to do it in the daytime. So it kind of begs the question, all right, well, what are you actually up to? And you can see, Max has trailed some of these, where you can chart aircraft where they're flying zigzag patterns offshore, knowing that they're going to spread onshore. So, you know, there is clearly something going on. As I say, it looks very much as though the next stage, on the back of what the document you showed me today, the next stage is to explain it away as, well, we've had to do this to save you all. You know,
yeah, I think there's this kind of slow implementation, and you find this actually in a lot of areas now, where there's this kind of, there's a denial, but an admission at the same time. This double speak going on, and that seems to be going on throughout public bodies, you know. So I think the thing is with this IPCC report, the latest one, it's incredibly contradictory. I was watching their panel discussion, and it would be great to get some of these people actually on the show or replying in the future. But today we just wanted to basically introduce you to this phenomenon that's going on worldwide in all NATO countries, it appears. So if you want to phone it, it's 0203 714 2700. This is Windows on the World, and I'm talking to Jonothan Adams, who's a researcher, and we're talking about the chemtrail phenomenon, or geoengineering. So, Jonathan, we're going to go to a break shortly, but in summing up, what would you say to people? What would you say to them to get them to look up to the skies? What would you say?
I would say, yeah, I mean, step one, just look up.
Yeah.
OK, that's the first thing, just have a look. And I would also say it's beyond NATO. I was chatting at another one of the chemtrail awareness marches in London at the beginning of the year with a lady who spent a lot of time in the Amazon basin. They're chemtrailing even there, and these are the lungs of the planet. So there's obviously something going on. What it is and why, again, you know, I wouldn't begin to say for any degree of certainty that we know. But look up, ask questions, and once you can see that there's something going on, you know, phone the Met Office, phone the aviation companies, start building a groundswell of pressure. If we can reach a critical mass where enough people are asking questions, then something, I hope, will give.
That's what we need, a critical mass. We're going to go to a break, so we'll be back just after this break. Remember, this is Windows on the World, 0203 714 2700. We'll be back after the break. Thank you. Welcome back to Windows on the World. This is our first video interview from the Geoengineering Chemtrails Awareness Day in Whitehall, London, on November the 3rd. OK, Pete, so convince the sceptical public about geoengineering.
OK, well, basically, the weather has been experimented with since 1928. There was a process for producing artificial fogs, a US patent. Like I say, 1928, so we're just under 90 years of weather modification experiments, and that's down on paper. These have been done. Now, through the 1950s, for example, the RAF was accused of creating the Lynmouth flood. That was in 1953, as I say, and there's about 12 or 13 people died in that situation, and it's known that RAF created that flood. So, I mean, that was classed again as an experimentation. What we see since 1995 in America, 1998 in Britain, is a general weather modification program.
Do you think it was happening before 1995?
Only in the experimentation form, in that sense, you know, or let's say in a warfare form. For example, Mussolini sprayed Ethiopia in 1936 as part of the Second World War, build up to that, if you like. You know, so I mean, Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, he reported planes going over and leaving up to 19 trails over his land. You know, he described in 1936 what we're talking about nowadays, you know, exactly the same thing.
We're doing it to everybody now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's basically it. You know, with regard to the weather modification, if people look at a film called Summer Rain that was made in 1998 in Brighton, England, you can see chemtrails in that. You know, so it's like, it's up to people to, you know, when they look at information, is don't just look at the actors, look at the skies and stuff.
That's a very interesting point. I've heard this off several people, and people really need to do that and look at films that are about 10, 15 years old, and see how the skies have actually changed. Exactly. Because even on council documents, they're actually putting chemtrails into the photographs, so people get used to it.
All sorts of companies do it nowadays, you know. And the thing is, like you say, old family photographs, anything like that, that really, you look for the 1970s, there's a lot of disinformation out there, especially about persistent contrails. 20-year-olds might not know any difference, but the people who are older, let's say 35 or older, they are going to know that this is just not normal, you know, what we see. And again, you know, it's the same thing, you know, people have to just kind of remember, wake up, remember what you used to see, remember what we used to do, and stop falling for the lie that pilots about nowadays, because there is a lot of information. In kids' films, they have, in the backdrops in kid films, they have chemtrails. You know, it's a real deep agenda. And the thing is now as well, nowadays, the elite like to tell you what's going on via the internet and via direct sources. They can tell you through their own programmers, if you like, whereas 20 or 30 years ago, that was told to you through the media. You know, it's the only way you got that agenda, sort of thing. You know, so now the information is out there. There's no excuses for people.
There is no excuse now. We have the power.
We do have the power, indeed. And it's important to remember as well that the people in power seek total control. Now, all the time that people like us gather here, it don't matter whether you're gathering against vaccines, wars, geoengineering, it just doesn't matter. Whatever you're gathering and protesting against, that knocks on their door and reminds them that they do not have total control.
I think what they have to remember is they're expendable. They may have a very high salary at the moment, but that's not going to last forever. Your job isn't going to be there in 5 years' time. No. Maybe we're not going to be here in 5 years' time.
Yeah, it could be with what's going on in Fukushima this month, or it could be highly likely, eh? You know, but you know, that's the situation is, and that's why we know they're just playing a game. All they need to do is last 4 years, implement whatever. They get their 100,000 a year, you know, and they come out with it with the money. They've got their property. They're already on top, you know. So it's like that's all they have to do, and people, all they need to do is almost blag people for 4 years, easy. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, keep the machine rolling, you know. But again, you know, the difference is now we're waking people up to such an extent that an event like today, whether we give out 5,000 flyers, let's say if 1,000 people actually look into that, then what does that snowball into? You know, I mean, and that's what we keep having to do on the grassroots level. Yeah, go for, you know, talk to the politicians, talk to journalists, everything else, do that usual stuff, but just keep talking to people and just keep waking people up to what's going on.
You were talking to a pilot earlier, weren't you? What was his take on it?
Okay, the pilot was a very interesting situation. Firstly, he was speaking, it's a conspiracy theory. We corrected him to conspiracy fact. You know, he was very distant to even admitting that he knew what it was, in the sense of he saw it happening and stuff. I spoke to him about a few things. He was refusing to take information, but we spoke to him about the US patents from the 1920s, stuff like that. He started switching on. Spoke to him about pilots that have put videos on YouTube where you can clearly see the air hostesses, etc., the cabin crew going, oh my God, that was close, you know, that sort of thing. He started switching on again, and then as he walked off, he did take information off me, which was, he was refusing information before, but he did take information. I did approach him up the road after we'd got away from here, and I offered him to do an anonymous video with me.
He didn't want to be on camera, but you did an excellent job there, because I watched it.
Yeah, and he refused that basically, but at the end of it, he basically cracked from the pressure, and all he could say was, I'm scared of losing my job, I'm scared of losing my job. So really, he was very defensive, blah, 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 for about 3/4 of it, but in the end, he was just, all he could say to us was, it's not worth my job, it's not worth my job.
Is it worth his health, though?
That's the thing, I did mention that to him. I even brought up the new thing of aerotoxic syndrome, and how they're probably telling them that that's about, you know, when really it's the geoengineering, etc. And, you know, he hadn't even heard of it. He clearly looked surprised, and I don't know what the hell that is that you're talking about, mate. You know,
well, you put him into shock, and now he can start thinking about it, hopefully.
So I think hopefully he will go away. You know, I mean, his partner looks very interested. The fact is, I mean, he has got a research list now. He has got information. So, you know, hopefully it's just going to trigger it off in him. You know, maybe he'll talk to someone in his tea break about it, something like that, you know. But again, we've had Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, spoke out in 2009. A couple of politicians, Sweden, Venezuela, spoke out in 2011. And that's about where we are. You know, it's until one of these people actually gets, you know, grows a pair, for want of a better word, you know, and says like, okay, I'm going on the front of the newspapers and saying this is going on. You know, all we can do is grassroots awareness, really. And just,
well, I'm glad you've grown a pair, Pete. Do you want to show us your
I've got my UK Skywatch T-shirt on.
Okay, welcome back everybody to Windows on the World on this Sunday morning. You can phone in, it's 0203 714 2700. We're having a special show today which coincides with the People's Voice showing the film What in the World Are They Spraying, which deals with geoengineering of the planet. Now, next guest on the show is Max Bliss, who's been researching geoengineering in the UK. He also does talks on geoengineering. He now lives in France, where he shot this video. We're going to see this video from Max now.
Hello my friends, this is the 27th of October 2013. Mr. Max Bliss in the southwest of France, giving you the latest geoengineering, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol geoengineering report, weather warfare, mind control, poisoning of the environment, ecocide program that will give us all Alzheimer's, as the aluminium oxide, which is used in these sprays, found in excessively high amounts in rainwater analysis, demonstrates that yes, there are particles of alkaline metals such as barium, strontium, manganese, lithium, arsenic and many other ingredients found in rainfall that should not be there.
Video, and you're making some very strong statements there. You've been researching this for a number of years. Can you tell us how you got into this area?
I think the main reason I got into chemtrails, looking at geoengineering, is because I went to live in the south of France, where into a region where they have a record high of number of sunshine hours, and it's a particularly beautiful area. It's very rural, there's no pollution. So I would call it a sort of beautiful place to be, a pristine place. And we started to notice that the skies were littered with X's and grids and just tremendous visual impact of these sprays in the sky.
What year was this, Max?
This is in 2011 that I started to notice that a couple of years ago. And basically, it didn't make sense. I'm living in an area where there's no pollution, there's no reason why I should be seeing these trails. I've worked outside all my life, and I've always been weather dependent, and therefore I would know what the weather forecast was going to be and what might happen, because if it started raining I'd have to go home. So I would say that I had a very sort of common, familiar feel with what's going on in the sky. To see all these trails really caught my attention. So I decided I would try to research and try to understand what was going on, because it was not the same. And as I delved into it, I found very quickly a reference to chemtrails, and I started to look into this topic. The more and more I looked into it, I realised there was an awful lot of disinformation. There was an awful lot of websites and information to confuse people. And I started to recognise that there must be something more serious. To have such a big effort to stop people finding out the truth, to have that level of disinformation, there must be something very important going on. So that really spurred me on to try to find out more information. I did understand a little bit about the woodpecker in Russia, which is an antenna array at Chernobyl, which was used. I was taught about this at a lecture when I was in the army for mind control. And so I did realise there was some connection with the atmosphere and atmospheric physics. So I started to look into this, and when you look on the information that's available on the internet, you will come across something called HAARP, which is the High Active Aurora Research Program, which is basically an ionospheric heater. Well, I found out that they've been using radars to heat up the atmosphere and interact with the particles in the atmosphere, the electrons, since the 50s. So, and they knew about it at the turn of the last century. I
think that's a very important point, that weather modification and this type of technology is not new, is it?
Not at all. In fact, most governments have been desperately trying to find out how to control the weather for centuries. You know, it's been a very long-term desire to control the weather, for military aspects mostly. And basically, the more I delved into it, the more I realised there's a tremendous amount of information, and I wanted to find out reliable information, verifiable information. So really, there's a very long history of interacting with the weather, for military purposes.
Well, there's a document owning the weather by 2025, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. That came out in 1996, and that goes into great detail, actually, about how they will modify and control the weather and own the weather. There's also an extension to that, which is about a total surveillance system, where these particles that are going into the atmosphere, they're spraying, will be used as part of a huge global surveillance system, because the nanotechnology that
This is getting onto a very interesting area, which Clifford Carnicom has really done a lot of research on, and this thing is with this subject is vast. What we'd like to do today, I think, is just keep it fairly simple for the viewers, because I'm sure there's people out there who are well aware of what's going on with this geoengineering programme, but for those of you who aren't, we just want to introduce you to the subject. So if you can phone in, it's 0203 714 2700. Now, Max, so you've done an incredible amount of research in a short time, haven't you?
Yeah, I must admit that it's taken over my life. I've taken time out of my life, and I've got a lot of things I would like to be getting on with. You know, I haven't just taken on an obsession or anything like this. I literally have become aware of various levels of information that make me realise this is possibly the most important issue that most people are not talking about. Yeah. And therefore, I mean, it's quite simple. When you start to publicise it, like I've done with my YouTube channel, basically, you will come across the point where they say these are condensation trails. Yeah. Now, London, I grew up in Brighton. I worked in my younger years around, as a builder, around the south of England, which is underneath the air corridors, the busiest air corridors in the world, servicing London Gatwick and London Heathrow. Yeah. So, in my earlier years when I was working outside, as I said earlier, I was weather dependent. I'd always been watching the skies. You never saw this, did you? Never saw great, trails Max. Ever in the
We're going to go to our first caller now, who's called Sam Bright from Norfolk. Are you there, Sam?
Yes, hello, Mark.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm very well. So you've got something to say to us about geoengineering today?
Yes, yes. I've installed the Flight Radar 24 and been watching the sky for a while, and I did actually go to the first two geoengineering rallies at Richmond Square and Kensington Temple. Yeah. And I do agree with Jonathan. It seems the trails are times when people are least likely to notice them. Yeah. But there definitely is something going on. I think people should install and watch on Flight Radar 24.
Yes, I've heard about that, and that can give you all the flight paths that are going on all over the world. So, what have your findings been? What's your take on it? Do you think there's this covert operation going on?
Well, the question is why? What is being hidden? Why is it being sprayed? I've come to two conclusions having watched it. Yeah. One of them is that the trails are toxic, and that the test results I saw from a scientist from Manchester University called Simon showed that the levels of aluminium, barium and so on, this was printed out from the university, were about 5 to 20 times the safe level for people to have in their blood.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that, and we were going to bring that up on the show today about soil samples. So you actually know people who've taken soil samples and had them analysed, and is this from your area?
Some of them are from Dereham, which is in Norfolk. It's not immediately in my area, but it's in the same county. And I have seen the test results, like I said, from Simon from Manchester. And I've also spoken to people from the RAF who've said, yes, we agree that there are chemtrails, but not all of them are chemtrails. And the other question that arises is, is this a subsidiary outcome that they're not really concerned about, that we're getting poisoned by these chemtrails, or is it actually going on because they're trying to hide something by putting up the chemtrail cover to do with aircraft activity and the number of satellites to spy on us? That's another question. I think there are probably,
there may be several agendas going on. I mean, if you start researching this, you will actually find it takes you in a lot of different areas, just like Max has been saying. But mainly it appears to be being done on the back of global warming, solar radiation management and stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. Are these terms you're familiar with?
Yes, and when I've looked into it, because I'm a social science researcher, I've got a couple of degrees in that, and I do tutor degree students in the subject. Yeah. And when I've looked at it, there's no actual evidence of any global warming for 17 years, and I've rung the meteorological department at the University of East Anglia and spoken to the head of environmental sciences there, I asked him about it, and he said the pictures I sent him of the chemtrails were no evidence of anything unusual, which they clearly did look very unusual. But when I asked him about geoengineering and solar radiation sound waves, he went silent. And I said, well, what about HARP? And he went completely silent and said, oh, I don't know much about it. And he told me what it meant and said, I'll ring you back and talk about it.
So you're saying that there seems to be several agendas going on here. So as well as solar radiation management, you're saying that there's something else going on, maybe some covert military operation. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. From what I've got from the RAF, I've sat and watched it a lot, and I live in a very open area near ex-RAF bases that have been taken over by American airline routes, very immediate to where I live, in a very open space. And I've sat and watched it for the last 2 years, and you can even hear some of the sound waves at times, and you can certainly see the lines in the sky, and then the sky whites out. I mean, it's really obvious.
I think that's what most of us are familiar with.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're up to, but sometimes there's some very noisy, very unusual aircraft go over, and the RAF guy has hinted to me that there's something going on within these aeroplanes. At first I thought it might have just been arms or military stuff going on.
That's very interesting points you've made there, Sam.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for calling in, and that's certainly given us something else to talk about. So, Max, I don't know whether you could hear that, but Sam was saying that there may be some kind of military aspect to this. What do you think about that?
Well, I've filmed military plane spraying. Yeah. I've filmed a co-opted commercial airlines spraying, but different types of spray. I filmed what I've now been able to identify as charter airlines, specifically doing chemtrailing. And using flight radar. Sometimes I screenshot their flight paths, which might be zigzagging right across the country. Basically,
this is the unusual thing, isn't it? These flight paths, they don't seem to be conventional. I live near London City Airport, and there's definitely some very unconventional flight paths that don't seem to be going into that airport. There was hardly any air traffic there 5 years ago. It's increased massively. But with the chemtrailing, this is what I find extremely puzzling, that it's very difficult to see whether these things are actually on standard flight paths. So would you say that there's extra operations going on, and commercial airlines have been co-opted into spraying? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think basically I've identified many different airlines that are involved, and I think the co-opted commercial planes, not all of them, but some of them are spraying just a particular type of spray. So I would look at that as a particulate foundation that they can interact with the EMF technology. But the other planes that are doing the zigzagging, they've got various different sprays, different materials inside. Obviously, for their various experiments that they want to participate with, they have different functions. So
you're saying that they have. So what you're saying is that they may have different tanks attached for different spraying. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, different ingredients. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. So we're going to go to our next caller now. I think it's called Brenda. Are you there, Brenda?
Hello?
Hello, Brenda. Welcome to Windows on the World.
I'm just saying that I used to sunbathe up to 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You can't, because I'm on an estate and it's continual.
Yes.
Continual. And they sometimes do it on a night, so you get it first thing in the morning. It's everywhere. As soon as you get a lovely clear sky, they come out.
What alerted you this in the first place, Brenda? How did you start noticing them?
About 5 years ago, sunbathing, laid outside looking at the sky.
Where's this?
Blocking the sun.
And what part of the country are you in, Brenda?
Hull.
You're in Hull, yeah?
Yes. And it's just rife everywhere.
Yes.
It's not just in the countryside. It's in advertisements now.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true, Brenda, and I think that's a very good point you've brought up there. They have started putting chemtrails into advertisements, and actually, it looks as though they're doing it as part of the when they
to make it look
design
natural.
the graphic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really bad, and the smell. Some days you can't go out.
Smell.
What you're saying that there's a smell attached to it. I've never come across that before.
Well, I honestly can smell it. It's really bad sometimes, and I won't be the only one. And it's just all this poison pumping out on you all the time.
Well, yes. I mean, apart from the other thing about the geoengineering is it's actually trapping more pollution in. So it's actually causing global warming as well.
But not healthy. And they have the audacity to say take vitamin D. The children will be lacking it because they're blocking the sun, and they're saying, oh, dementia figures will be rife. You'll be staying at home to be looked after. Well, of course it will be if they're pumping this crap on us all the time.
Well, I agree, Brenda, entirely. But what are we going to do about it? Have you contacted your MP? Have you talked to people about it locally? Is there an awareness of geoengineering in Hull at the moment?
Well, people think you're mad. People actually make out as I'm mad because I say, look what they're pumping on us. And
well, yeah, just because you've looked at the sky makes you mad, yeah.
But people must look up. People must... I don't know.
That's a really good point, Brenda. Thanks for calling in. Very strong points you've made there. People do really need to start looking up to the sky and seeing what's there. These are not contrails. These persistent contrails.
Can I say, Matt, it's also about breaking this programming of being our own police.
Yeah.
We are trained to police ourselves. You know, we fear and revile the heretic. Anybody who steps outside of the programming and suggests, as Brenda just says, that there's something not right. We're conditioned to, oh no, and this starts as early as in schools, you know, where conformity is rewarded and any kind of individualism is punished. And
absolutely, Jonathan, that's a very good points there, and please do phone in. We're going to go to a break. It's 0203 714 2700. This is Windows on the World. Please phone in. Welcome back. This is our second video from the Geoengineering Chemtrails Awareness Day in Whitehall, London on November the 3rd. This is Mark Windows for the People's Voice TV. I'm with Mona from UK Skywatch, and Mona's going to try and convince a sceptical public about geoengineering or chemtrails.
I never used to see this a few years ago, even though geoengineering and aerosol spraying has been in existence for quite some time. It's only been in the last few years that I've really noticed how fast they can spray and change the blue sky white.
It becomes a milky haze, doesn't it?
It becomes a milky haze.
So what are you going to say to people when they say, well, why are they doing it?
Why? I think, there's many reasons. I think individually we all research. Well, first thing I'd say is don't believe what anybody says. Go and do your own research. And there's so many places to research. There's CHEMTRAILS Project UK, there's UK Skywatch, there's Global Skywatch, there's really good films. Why in the world are they spraying? What in the world are they spraying? Conscience Beyond Chemtrails was a conference that was put together last year in Los Angeles. Brilliant speaker, Scott Stevenson, who's a meteorologist, who became aware and woke up. He's a scientist. So if you don't believe in this stuff and you're logical and you're scientific, listen to his presentations. Dane Wigington, he's an environmentalist and he studied, I think, climate scientist. And also Laura Eisenhower, okay, she did a fantastic presentation. Watch it, Conscience Beyond Chemtrails. But if you just want to just start by watching the sky, remember what the sky used to look like. Go through old photographs of the sky, and when you wake up in the morning, watch the sky, watch the sunrise, and then watch the sky during the day. Not many people watch the sky because of technology. We're always looking at our phones. We're not connecting with our natural environment. Rainwater samples. Chemtrails Project UK do rainwater samples. I mean, I've got them on me, but you can have a look on their website or contact Chemtrails Project UK. They're £25 a test. If 5 of you get together, that's £5, and you can find out how much aluminium or how, you know, the metal particles which are in the rainwater, which are absolutely horrific. Another thing is to check the pH balance. Now, this is something that's escalated in the last few years, and I ask, why are they doing it? Well, I think, for me personally, from a lot of research, for myself, because everybody has to go on their own journey, and for me, it is about breaking down our ecosystem, masking us, stopping us from evolving, stopping us from reaching a certain level of consciousness. That's for me personally, but we're all on our own separate journeys. find a venue, just find a few speakers, bring a few people together while we still have access to the internet and things like Facebook. Gather people together. If if you live in a village, get a few people together, connect through Facebook, raise days where you're all going to meet up. It's really important to meet people in person and share that energy. The internet's fantastic, but we all need to be communicating in person, and that's why we're here today, and that's why we're going to keep doing this, even if there's just a handful of us. We will be keeping on doing this until we raise enough awareness.
Thanks, Mona, that was brilliant.
Thank you, Mark.
That's Mona from UK Skywatch on the peoplesvoice.tv. Ha, that was great. Our next guest on the show is Mona Norman, who organises events for UK Skywatch and is also featured in that last video there. So, Mona, welcome to Windows on the World. I met you down at the Geoengineering Awareness Day in Whitehall on November the 3rd, but you've been bringing this subject out into the open and bringing people together for quite some time. Can you just tell us a bit about your background here?
Got to a point, photography. Photography brought me into the subject of chemtrailing, noticing the skies change, realising there's something not quite right. And I have a friend who set up Chemtrails Project UK, Olga Raffa, and along with Alex Longman. And she introduced me to the subject of chemtrails, and it just sunk in straight away. It didn't take much for me to make sense of it. Sometimes you have sort of like little signs going back. If you just look back through time and things just fall into place and make sense. And that was one thing. When she explained to me about chemtrails, I just went off and I started to do my own research. And we had September 2011, I think it was the sky was a complete grid. And it was quite overwhelming to experience it. This was in London, looking up and being under a grid. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to do everything I could, no matter how little it would be, to try to make a difference. And that's when I set about putting on a conference in West London. And I did a little research. I found Mr. Max Bliss. I looked at people that were actually actively getting involved, coherently carrying a message and raising awareness. And Max Bliss was one person, Ben Dodds, another guy, and Alan Potter. And I just had total trust in what I was doing. And you know, once I made that decision, everything else came into place. People went out of their way to help me set up this project. So we put the conference on, which was wonderful, just bringing people together in person. And in that room, there was so much information and knowledge that was shared. And so that was the first conference. And I was inspired by what happened in Los Angeles in the August before that, which was the Conscience Beyond Chemtrails.
Yeah.
I thought, well, they can do it. We can all do this.
Conscience Beyond Chemtrails.
We can all do this.
Yeah.
And then since then, we got Max over again in April, and we decided to do a tour. Instead of just putting a conference on in London, we'll take this on tour. We'll take it to towns and cities.
You did that in Max's van, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
In Max's Chuggaboom van,
Yeah.
so we got maximum attention.
I think that's the thing, though, about this subject. I think once you see that the sky is being completely covered and we've been potentially poisoned to death, then you have to start taking some action. And I think that's what happened, especially with you, Max, wasn't it? And obviously with you, Mona.
Well, it rubs, everything else I was doing was rubbing against me the wrong way. Something just didn't feel right. I was making a film about my local community, which at the time I wanted to do for the right reason, but I just couldn't focus on what I was doing because there was something, it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. And since then I put that down and I'm doing this.
And you're focused
and it just
now with
feels
this.
totally focused. This is,
we're going to go to our next caller now, Mona.
Right
who's,
thing for the right reason.
Yes, we'll carry on with this. This is a great chat. Our next caller is Vivian from Lincoln. Vivian, are you there? Vivian from Lincoln. Okay. Vivian, hello. Welcome to Windows on the World. Okay, we're trying to get Vivian back. So, Mona, before I rudely interrupted you for our caller, just what were you saying?
Well, I would say, if I'd give the opportunity, for anybody, if whatever you do, just have the opportunity to get people together to raise awareness, to make flyers, to gather people together, talk to your family, talk to your friends, every opportunity, you know, and we can all make a difference. If we just talk to 2 or 3 people a day and raise awareness and send them on a journey so that they can do the same thing, then
very
we're
important
making
point
a
you just
difference.
made there, because I've found this, that even people I've met in the street, even neighbours, I've started to talk to them about it and they go, yeah, you're right. and then they start to get it, because it doesn't really take much to get it, does it?
I think there's another component to this, which is that a lot of people's first line of defence when they first come to issues like this is that, oh, well, they wouldn't do that, would they? And of course, you've only really got to start, even a cursory glance at history will see that they absolutely will do that. There's documented evidence available that the Ministry of Defence sprayed people up and down Norfolk throughout the 1950s and 60s. Yeah. You've got the stuff where they did the Lynmouth spray, which is arguably what caused the flood.
In 1952, where 35 people drowned, and they kept that quiet for 50 years.
And I think what we need to acknowledge is that certainly in military terms, you know, they don't need a reason, they only need a method. You know, if they can do it, they're damn straight going to have a go.
I think a very important point is also this is a big financial industry. And there's a lot of people have got a lot of money invested in this.
Oh, well, the short stocks, the stock
derivatives, the whole of it as a business, weather as a business. Because weather is being traded as a commodity on the international stock market. People need to know that as well, don't they?
And then if you factor in the carbon offset trading as well, and you know, if there's money to be made in it, that's reason enough.
And the potential for biotech, where GMOs will be the only food that will survive as the saturation level hits a tipping point, where they're continually spraying. They've been spraying now for at least since the mid-90s, incrementally increasing the amount they're spraying to the levels today, which are basically, we are heading towards a tipping point where the massive research into aluminium-tolerant GMOs will mean they're in position to monopolise the food supply market.
Exactly, and this is what we know, is that there's aluminium-resistant seeds actually being formulated.
For trees, for food, everything you can think of.
So it's total control of the world's food supply and poisoning of the population.
You factor in that, and then you also look at a few years ago, the Gates Foundation sunk a massive amount of money into a seed bank in the permafrost. In Antarctica.
And there are one of them.
That's right. So they've squirreled away all the safe seeds that are non-GM, so they know that they're safe somewhere that doesn't require electricity in the permafrost. Then they proceed to go about creating an environment, a commercial environment, where that they can, and you know, you've only got to look at the way in which free market capitalism works, which is to its ultimate aim is perpetual growth, perpetual profit, and the best way to do that is to end up being the only game in town. And if you're the only people growing stuff, the only people capable of selling it, then you are going to win. In those terms, what they don't see, of course, is the longer range, which is actually they're going to suffer just as much as everybody else they're doing it to.
Yeah, but they're very prepared for what they're doing. That's the other thing you have to understand, that the people, a common question people will say, well, they wouldn't spray themselves. You know, because
it's kind of a bit of a tired argument that now, isn't it? When we realise how insane a lot of the people actually are, and the insanity of corporations, basically, because it's really about financial gain and control.
Well, it comes back to that whole thing about compartmentalisation, which you see in the military, you see in government, you see in corporations, where, you know, you get your fat paycheck and your nice car and your 6 weeks holiday. All you've got to do is do that. Don't look over there. Just do that and everything will be fine.
That's right.
Only the guys right at the top that can see. Actually, you're going to be just as dead as everybody else.
We're going to go to our next caller now. It's Denny in Essex.
Hello.
Hello, Denny.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Welcome to Windows on the World.
Thank you. Doing a great job.
Well, it's very nice of you to say so. So you're aware of geoengineering then, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was something I saw first in 2009, and then I think it was like Max said earlier, it completely changed my life. My life took a completely different course from then on. And of course it woke me up to many, many other things as well. And the whole covertness of worldwide operations.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you're aware of this. What do you find is the uptake when you talk to people about it? Do you find that that most of them are receptive, or would you say that a large percentage don't believe you? What would you say that was?
Well, what it's been is a learning curve for me, and that I'm now more able to talk to people rather than freak out on people about it. So that's been really important, actually.
I think that's a very important point you make, Denny, because once you get a certain amount of this information, you can start to sound like a lunatic, because you'll go too quickly.
It's sort of like a curve. It's like you sort of go mad yourself, sort of freaking out about it, but then gathering more information makes you understand.
Have you got your radio on, Denny?
No.
All right, we're getting a bit of feedback through the speaker there. So,
yeah, I turned the speaker off. What should I do?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yes, so it's more information you find out actually makes you calmer because you become really aware, and then you don't allow people to argue with you about it. Because
that's a very good point. I'd just like to just put that to our guest today, Denny, if you don't mind. Yeah. Did you say Max, Jonathan and Mona, you know, don't all speak at the same time, but did you find that basically when you can introduce the subject kind of slowly, exactly. But if you go too quickly with things, you are referred to as a lunatic.
Exactly. Yeah. But sometimes it works to just sort of whip it in and then walk away.
Whip it in and walk away.
Yeah, but the government...
your motto.
Well, you are speaking from Essex, Denny. Yeah, I was just trying to introduce our guests here because we're this is my first show. We're just getting our way around the studio and how it all works. So basically, I want to bring the guests in too. And so you've been into this subject of geoengineering since 2009. You said, and you're obviously particularly concerned about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have phoned up. I mean, what would you say? What would you tell other people about the health implications of this?
Oh my goodness! Well, people need to actually address it so that they can start addressing their diets, their habits, many things like, well, don't expose yourself to too much rain, for one.
Okay.
You know, it's very, very simple answers, really, to that.
Now, a lot of people talk about colloidal silver.
Oh, excellent.
Do you know anything about that?
I do. Colloidal silver is very good for viruses, but I would say to get rid of the particulates and fibres that are coming from the fallout of the chemtrails or within the rain, etc., it's better to go for something like diatomaceous earth, which actually manages to strip out the heavy metals from the body. Or I think it's called bentonite clay, which I've only just purchased myself, but I've just seen.
So, sorry, we're just going to go to our guests and bring them in, Denny. So, Max and Mona, you were aware of this, were you?
Yes. Aware of what actions we can take to try and cleanse our bodies.
Yeah.
You can take chlorella and spirulina, which is seaweed derivatives. Yeah. That basically what we're looking at is chelating metals from our system.
Yes.
And so there are precautions you can take to try to remove the fibres and the metals, which everyone should start to look into and see what they can. Even as simple foods like parsley and garlic will help purify the blood, and they will help you. We should be aware that we need to take precautions, and you can. So at least there are some steps we can take to help.
It's a very good point if we can share this information about the health aspect of this, because obviously, aluminium is an extremely toxic, and if we're being sprayed with it, we're not being told we're being sprayed with it, but all this has been actually in mainstream newspapers. For instance, the Daily Mail reported that huge mirrors may be put in the sky to reflect the sun. What they meant by huge mirrors is actually the spraying of aluminium, particulate aluminium, into the upper atmosphere. So this is a massive subject and one that we can't cover in whole today, but we are going to come back to. So, Denny, are you still there?
Yeah.
So, we've just been talking about the health implications. And do you find that this detoxifying works? Do you feel any better? Because I know a lot of people have been complaining about many different... Sorry?
Sorry. Absolutely it does. I've been taking diatomaceous earth for about a year now, and when I don't take it, I get all foggy-brained again. And when I do take it, I feel quite bright and ready to go. But there's one more important thing that I want to add before I leave. The technology is far beyond chemtrails now. They have rockets to disperse this material in the upper atmosphere. They have what's called little portable machines called Taurus Molecular. I think it's 65. If you type Taurus Molecular Cloud, anybody, into YouTube...
I'm familiar with that, Denny.
Yeah,
I'm familiar with that, and you can see that on YouTube.
Cloud-making machine.
Taurus Molecular Cloud. See how they create clouds. Thanks for your call, Denny. We're going to go to Vivian next. Our next caller is Vivian. Are you there, Vivian? Okay, well...
Hello?
Hello, Vivian.
Oh, yes.
Oh, at last. You've been waiting to get through for quite some time. Yeah.
I have.
Yes, Vivian, where are you calling from?
Lincoln.
You're calling from Lincoln?
Yep.
Okay, so what have you got to say to us today?
Well, I'm just very curious and worried about this situation. Yeah. So much so that I've got an allotment, and it was about 4 years ago I noticed these streams of clouds and the colours in them, rainbow colours, and I thought, well, I have never seen that in my life. And so I've been curious ever since, and it's got really bad. So I actually phoned up Waddington Airfield, and they said they'd get back to me, but they didn't.
I think this is we're finding that this with quite a few government departments that people say they'll get back to you and they don't. Yeah. I think a lot of them don't have the information. I mean, it's like if you ask the Home Office for certain information, you will get a standard response. Yeah. Because that's all the people in the office know about. Again, it's the compartmentalisation.
Yeah. And nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah. So how do you wait?
I really wanted the biggest issue is that when you mention it, as people have said, they look at you as if you're a bit crazy. Yeah. And I have had an NDE in 1969. I've had a few experiences that obviously when I tell people things, they really aren't interested at all. They think that I've flipped. But it has got bad in Lincoln, and I have had health problems, and I've noticed other people have had health problems as well. And I had a metallic taste in my mouth. Other people have had that. I've been looking on the internet for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that what we have to do is maybe appeal to people's kind of selfishness, basically. Once it affects them, then they might get interested. So. Yep.
But they say it's CHEMTRAILS, and, they dismiss it. And I want to make sure that they don't dismiss it anymore.
It's great that people like you are out there, Vivian. We're going to go to a break. But thanks for calling in. Do call again. This is Windows on the World, Sunday morning on the peoplesvoice.tv. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Here's another video we shot at the Chemtrails Awareness Day at Whitehall.
I'm Lorraine Suringer from South Wales, and I came because I feel that passionate about what's going on, and I really want to try and raise awareness and get people to contact their MPs and try and get this stopped. Because
well, it's interesting that you're from South Wales, because I drove down the M4 once and I saw the pattern of the trails being sprayed across the sun. Exactly. And South Wales was terrible. It was worse than London.
My whole camera, I've got thousands of photographs. I sent them all off to my MP Peter Hain on a disc, and all the other evidence and information I've gathered, and he's supposed to be looking into it. I haven't heard back from him yet.
These people are meant to be serving us. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a shambles. The first time I contacted him, he sent me a standard Department of Transport fact sheet saying that these are just contrails, and they will persist under certain conditions.
So he nearly said persistent contrails, but not quite.
Fact sheet, yeah. But when for the next year, I took photographs at all different times of day, all different times of year, and in all different types of weather, to show that no matter what the conditions, they will happen. And I've sent that off to him now, and to me it's evidence. I've got pictures of him starting the spraying. I've got then screenshots and flight radar to show they're not even on the radar, these planes.
So what would you say to your MP now, if he was watching this?
I'm saying I'm waiting for a response from you. You're supposed to be representing the people. I've been posting a lot of information and videos and photographs on his own. He's got a Facebook page called Neath Voice, which is for the people to voice their opinions and views, and a lot of people are aware. Our skies in Neath are absolutely plastered. It's particularly bad in Wales, and I drive up the M4 a lot as well, and you can see it's covered from one end to the other. And well, a lot of people are noticing it now, and I think it's about time they come out of the closet and they actually admitted what's going on. It's available if you research online in government documents, you can find the information, but a lot of people don't think to do that, so it's not in the mainstream media as yet. I teach, I'm a supply teacher, so I go around all the schools. Every science teacher I speak to say they don't even believe in the global warming myth. it's on the curriculum. So basically, the kids are being brainwashed. The teachers they don't even believe it, and they can't do anything about it. So, you know, I feel that our young generation are being brainwashed. You know, it's about time people woke up now, because things are getting so bad, and we don't know the long-term effects of these nanoparticles. Even Professor Keith, who's the main man behind it all in America, he says those particles stay up there for up to a year. So he's admitting that once they sprayed, they can last up to a year up there, but they come down. So we're breathing them in, we're ingesting them. And when he was confronted and asked what are the dangers of aluminium, he tried to evade the question and then said we actually don't know. You know, we haven't got long-term effects.
Have you done any soil sample analysis where you live?
There have been a few people have done it, and some water samples, and they have come back high. So, but I mean, this is global. Everybody's sending in these samples. I'm thinking of doing one myself, actually. I
think it's a good idea for everyone in their own individual area to do it, because then they might not be able to ignore it as much.
I know, because and even if you can afford it, have your hair tested and things. I did ask my doctor about it actually, because you know my asthma has been very bad. I know a lot of people are suffering. So you know, I think if we don't act now, this could be severely detrimental to the planet. I know the trees where I live are suffering as well. A lot have been. I live near the Knoll Country Park, and you're going to be horrified at this. 5,000 trees have been taken down. 5,000. You know, due to fungal infections and all such things, which seem to thrive in high metal soils, whereas other plants won't thrive. So it's a lot of
definitely worth doing some soil sample analysis of that area.
Definitely. I'm going to look into doing that for myself, but there have been some done already, and they have come back high, and it's worrying very. So
thanks, Lorraine. That was brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Geoengineering has been done on the back of global warming. This report is from a document entitled The First Global Revolution by Alexander King and Bertrand Schneider, which was published as a book in 1991. It states, in searching for a common enemy against who we can unite, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behaviour that they can be overcome. David Rockefeller's protégé, Maurice Strong, states the terms of reference for the IPCC are: the definition of climate change is limited to only human causes. Natural causes are eliminated. The biggest contributor to climate change, the sun, is therefore left out. So welcome back, everybody. And we do like to have a bit of fun on Windows on the World. And today's bit of fun is singer-songwriter and performer Spizz. His song Where's Captain Kirk topped the indie charts in 1980, and he's still touring and writing. His band changed their name every year after they started in 1980. Previous incarnations include Athletico Spizz 80, Spizz Oil and Spizzles. He has a new single, City of Eyes, to be released soon. Spizz, welcome to Windows on the World.
Hello there, Mark.
Yes. Hello, hello.
I put on my non-swearing voice.
Put on your non-swearing, non-rock and roll voice, because we're being very serious today.
Yes, I understand. I heard some stuff.
You were at the old punk festival the other night, weren't you?
Yeah, we played. The 229, the venue. Very good.
229, yeah.
There's already a clip of City of Eyes on YouTube already.
It's a great tune. It
Thanks.
really is. And now you started in sort of 1978, really, didn't you?
Well, my first performance was in '77, but yeah, by the time I did my second performance, I was on posters. I was ready, and my second gig was in London.
Yeah.
So.
And you formed a kind of duo with Pete Petrel, didn't you?
Then I saw Pete in the street, and I said I got this London gig. I ain't got a car, and he had a car.
Yeah.
Always useful.
Yeah.
And he played guitar, so he basically became a guitarist, and I was able to free my hands up to perform properly. And Spizz Oil became in 1978. We became Spizz Oil. Yeah.
Yeah, and many costume changes and name changes later. You're still gigging, and you're still touring. So, what were the changes? I mean, you got a record deal with A&M quite early on, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, we were the big labels were chasing Adamant, Killing Joke, and us, and we CBS got Adamant, someone else got something, and we got A&M. So we went to A&M, big label. Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to our first American tour in 1980. Yeah. Left a nice little trail across the sky as we went.
Yeah. We didn't see. Nice. We didn't see Chemtrails in 1980, though, did we?
Well, so I was saying, I've been checking my memory banks, and you know, you'd see the odd trail, and it would disappear after within a couple of hours.
So
now they just hang around, and they seem to be lower down.
Absolutely, yes. Stratospheric aerosol geoengineering.
Well, as you know, I'm slightly on the green end of the punk area music, and Energy Crisis was on that first album on the major label. And
I noticed that. Some of your early stuff is quite prophetic in ways, isn't it?
Oil inflation spirals, depression takes a hold, constant world recession out of our control, and when the ozone layer is gone, we'll have to run for the sun, and poisoning gases tearing up the sky. That's all in the one song, Energy Crisis.
Absolutely, and remember in the 80s it was all CFCs, wasn't it, making a hole in the ozone layer?
That's what triggered that song. It was because I've read the big papers in on the Sundays. I was quite.
But I mean, it was probably due to your hairspray that the ozone layer was depleted.
No, I'm not big. I wasn't a big user of hairspray. I'm more of a gel, and actually I don't use gel anymore. I use welcome to Hair Watch, because I got some, and I actually use conditioner.
Yeah, it's descending into trivia, ladies and gentlemen. But that's just, we do have to have a little bit of a break from the seriousness sometimes.
Well, we went crossed over there nicely.
We crossed over nicely. We did a nice little segue there, didn't we? So Spizz, have you seen what in the world are they spraying?
Yeah, I saw the YouTube clip, and it was nothing surprises me anymore. Yeah. And I can understand. I also saw some article about that many years ago about the mirrors. We're going to put mirrors in space, floating around like satellites. Yeah. And I thought, well, how's that going to work? But then just leave a little bit of aluminium in, which is actually tastes nice after a while.
Yeah, I think that lady was saying that she didn't like the taste of it, but it's, for Spizz, I suppose it's different, isn't it?
But it's a Marmite thing.
Yeah,
you either like it or you don't.
Particulate metals are part of your background, really, aren't they?
I can't comment on that.
It's a very interesting phenomenon, this, because it should be bringing a lot more people on board to phone in, and maybe it's just because it's Sunday morning, but we'd like more people to phone in about this if you've got any information or anything you want to share with us. But I think that the thing is with waking people up, I mean, you've been fairly politically active in certain respects, haven't you, over the years?
Well, I wrote a song called Summer in the Greenhouse, and also, basically I come from the environmental thing. I'm not, all this chemtrails is a bit more recent, but it's just madness, and the people at the top, like, we need to, there's everyone at the bottom, they want us at the bottom scrapping.
That's right, that's the pyramid. That's
and also, the more we fight against ourselves, the better it is for them. And
divide and rule is what they want.
It's control, control.
They want us to be divide and ruled. So we're going to go to our next caller now. I think it's Glyn. Is Glyn there? Ian, sorry. Ian. I've got a here piece in, you know.
Ian Simpson.
Ian from Buckinghamshire.
Mark, hello there. Hi. Great show, by the way.
Hi, great. That's great. This is the first Windows on the world ever, so welcome. Welcome, Ian. What have you got to say to us?
Yeah, I'm kind of a relative newcomer to this. I found out about this in April, and like one of your previous callers was saying, it kind of turned my life around, really. And I just had a few comments. One of your earlier guests, Samantha, mentioned something about an airport. My take on this, I've been researching basically the infrastructure, trying to figure out exactly who's doing it, how, where from, where they're getting the chemicals from, how they transport them, what airlines are involved, and all the rest of it.
You've done deep research
really
on
where
this,
I'm kind of focusing. And I was wondering, have you any idea where Samantha came from? Phoned from?
I think she's in Norfolk. We'll check later on. The guys in the gallery will know that.
Yeah, but also Denny as well had a really good point. She was like, about managing the whole process, how you deal with it with people. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, yeah. I've launched my own website now, basically. It's called look-up.org.uk, and it's literally just got online yesterday, and it's still, we're still trying to sort the menus out and everything. Okay, but there's an article on there which I felt very much the same way, because I went a bit crazy. I went through that whole kind of bell curve, when you first find out about this, and went a bit mad and went around screaming about it, and then you kind of come out of it the other side, and you're able to sort of process that information sensibly and calmly to other people.
That's what we have to do.
But the article's called Coping with the Knowledge, and it describes that whole process, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's what we have to do. We have to put this out there and not alarm people too much, because at the opposite end of the scale, from the beginning, it's very, very alarming. The more you learn about geoengineering, the more you study it,
It is, yeah. And the problem we face is that, you know, it's so scary that people can just switch off. I mean, my own parents are incapable of talking about it. They just cannot cope with the information at all. And every time I bring it up, it's like, oh, look, there's a squirrel in the garden. You know, it's that kind of attitude. You know, not everybody's like that. But one other point I wanted to make very quickly was one of the things we do on the website is we give advice on how to protect yourself. I don't know anything about alternative therapies. Really, so you know, that's not really my field. But one thing we have discovered, and there's more, but I won't give it all to you now because I know your time's limited. One of the primary things they're spraying is barium, and barium removes sodium from your body, obviously, which is salt. So keep an eye on your salt intake, because salt deficiency, sodium deficiency, is very similar to barium toxicity.
Yeah, that's
and
a very
there's
good
an
point,
article
Ian.
on that whole subject, basically,
That's
on the
a very
website.
good point, Ian.
So,
thanks for calling in.
And this is one thing we're experiencing across the country, basically. People are going to their GPs with confusion and lethargy and stuff like that, and it's a very common problem.
Yes, thanks very much for calling in, Ian. We're going to go to our next caller now, Olga. Is Olga there?
Hello.
This is Olga from CHEMTRAILS UK. Olga, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I appear to have a bit of a delay, but I'll just listen to you on the phone. Okay.
That's fine, Olga. We're all suffering from a bit of delay here today because it's Sunday and the People's Voice has been on air, well, nearly a week now, and everyone's absolutely exhausted. Simon in the gallery is doing a brilliant job, and the peoplesvoice.tv is going strong. So, Olga, what have you got to say to us today?
Yeah, well, first of all, fantastic show. Lovely to see everyone there. Mona, Max, Jonathan, Spizz, I think his name is, and yourself. Well done. Beautiful show.
And myself, yeah.
But, yeah, I just want to, you know, plug Chemtrails Project UK because we had written the directive to ban geoengineering a few years ago, and we've just done an update, which is really accessible and readable now.
I've seen that, Olga. And I've read through it, and I had the original directive, which was on my website, landofthefree.co.uk, and it's been really, really tightened up, and it's very strong now. So, yeah, I definitely recommend people look at that. So do you want us to
give it? And the great thing is if you go to it on the page, is that you can just access your MP, write a comment or the letter that you want to write to your MP, and it will go directly. The link will be sent to him. We also encourage people to actually download it, which we will put a PDF file up on it, to read it, share it with everyone in your community, and also get a petition that we have as well signed. And, you know, that's one thing. It's like a box that needs to be ticked. We obviously have gotten denial back from the governments, but with enough people pressure, you know, we can demand them to investigate and address this as a real issue, which we will not let go.
That's very well said, Olga. And that directive is incredibly important because it addresses all the major points. You can send it to your MP. At least they should see it. These people are there to serve us, and we should make sure they at least attempt to do that. Well, thanks for calling, Olga.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the show. It's a great show. Keep it up.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Bye now.
Yeah.
Mark, I think you better reintroduce me, because Olga, what's her name? Can't remember my name.
Well, there's somebody out there who doesn't know who you are.
Maybe if I had turned my jacket, it might have been more clearer. It's written on the back of the jacket.
It says Spizz Energi London.
Yeah, Spizz.
Yeah. So you're okay. Getting back to you, Spizz.
Yeah.
me, and me again. So,
me too.
Yeah, and you as well. Wow.
Sorry.
So your single City of Eyes. Okay. So tell us very quickly about your single City of Eyes.
Well, yeah, it's I changed the lineup of my band just recently, and we've written a song together, and it's called City of Eyes, and it's all about, you know, the email snooping and the CCTV cameras and the congestion charge cameras, and the fact that London is one of the most
surveilled cities in the world.
In the world, and so and also even Facebook stalking. It's basically trying to touch on all this.
Facebook recognition.
And
Facebook facial recognition. Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. You know, and it's a cracker. It's got good reception on Friday night.
Great.
To an audience had never heard it before, and well, you can hear it now if it's on YouTube.
Well, it's great that you're still doing it.
Yeah, well...
Old punks never die.
Well, I haven't got a pension plan, I don't have life insurance, and I don't really care about that sort of thing, so I've got to keep working.
Sorry, Spizz, I should say, old new waivers never die. Pew, pew.
Bit harsh.
Well, that was good. We're going to go to our trailers now for the films, both What in the World and Why in the World Are They Spraying? So earlier on, the People's Voice TV showed What in the World Are They Spraying? And if you haven't seen that documentary, it is on YouTube. These are the trailers for What in the World Are They Spraying? And the follow-up, Why in the World Are They Spraying?
Imagine a world with natural clouds, clean air, clean water, and natural food. What happened? If you love your family, if you love your children, if you love our planet, it's time to get involved. This August, be part of the awakening and part of the solution. Why in the world are they spraying? A closer look into one of the many agendas associated with chemtrail geoengineering programs. Premiering and streaming live August 18th at the 3-day event, Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails Conference and Fundraiser in Los Angeles. For more info, go to www.cbclive2012.com. Order your copy today at www.whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com.
And if you control the weather, you're going to control the planet. It's that simple.
I watched last night a new film called What in the World Are They Spraying? By G. Edward Griffin, Michael Murphy, and Paul Wittenberger. And I have to tell you, it was the most devastating, disturbing thing I have seen in a long time. And what struck me as shocking is the response from our elected officials who had no interest, very few had any interest. People are so in their heads about this, and all you got to do is go outside because they spray every day.
If you get a chance, try Googling, what in the world are they spraying? In that sequence, what in the world are they spraying? We're talking about geoengineering.
New tonight, here's a tough question for you. Is the government spraying dangerous chemicals over us from planes? Some people believe there's a sinister top-secret mission that's making us sick. It's a story that has thousands of people talking tonight.
I think being skeptical is a good thing.
Some think we're being poisoned by planes spraying chemicals called chemtrails. But is there any truth to this?
I think that after this segment, we're going to have a lot of folks watching the skies a lot closer, probably going on YouTube to find your post. And I would encourage folks to look up, whether you believe it or not, What in the World Are They Spraying? It's a great documentary if you've never seen it.
So we're going to show What in the World Are They Spraying again next week, and if you haven't seen that, do watch it, and if you have seen it, tell your friends about it. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. We've touched on the subject of geoengineering, which is a massive subject which affects every single person on the planet. So I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I'm Mark Windows, this has been Windows on the World, and we're just going to have a roundup with our guests now. So, Jonathan, you're working on a British film about chemtrailing. Can you tell us just a bit about that?
I am, Mark. My film is got the title of Let's Talk About the Weather. It's an analysis of the issue of geoengineering and what the Met Office called persistent chemtrails from a European and UK perspective. Love to hear from anybody who's got some information they'd like to share with that. You can get a hold of me through my website, which is pentos.tv. That's Pentos Television, pentos.tv. There's also an array of associated information there that people may well find interesting.
So that's very interesting. So if anybody's got information or film that they'd like to share with Jonathan, it's just, do you want to say your website and your email again?
It's www.pentos.tv.
Fantastic. So Mona, When is the next Chemtrail Awareness Day?
Well, we're going to have another conference.
Oh, right, okay.
And what we're going to do is we're going to connect everything, because people who are aware of geoengineering need to realise the connection with Monsanto, with vaccines, with fracking, how it's all connected, which you find out if you do enough research. So we want to put a day conference on and work up, ending on Agenda 21, sort of connecting everything together.
That's
and having
a
the
subject we'll be
positives
covering
as
in
well.
future
Looking at
shows,
things like orgonites, looking at the health stuff, looking at the spiritual stuff, how we can empower ourselves. And just want to show you this. I've been gifted this. This is orgonite. It's William Reich, if anybody wants to research the power of realm. And I've left you one. And thanks for having me today, Mark. Really great.
Well, thanks for everyone coming in. And Max, your work on this subject has been incredibly detailed, because you only got into it very recently, didn't you?
Yeah, I would say in the last a year and a half, I've committed myself full time, giving up work and basically finding out as much information as I can, going around giving the talks, and I will be trying my best to write my first book this winter, so hopefully it'll be ready in the spring, explaining in detail.
And you've got a YouTube channel, haven't you?
Yeah, it's called The Real Institute with Mr. Max Bliss. Or if you put in Mr. Max Bliss on the internet, on any search engine, you'll come across me.
Yeah, your videos are absolutely excellent, and your commentary on chemtrail is passionate and excellent too. Yeah. So this is the way we're going to move forward. We need to make people aware of this subject, get them to look up at the sky, explain to them what's going on. These persistent contrails, which have been described in mainstream media, are not aircraft contrails. They are something completely different. We can debate on this a lot more in the future. But Spizz, have you enjoyed the show today?
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back in the TV studio again.
It must be. It must be. I suppose is it a bit of a change from Richard and Judy for you?
Yeah. I feel more at home. I've come home.
Yeah, it's more comfortable, isn't it? More laid back.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And there was beer in the fridge.
You haven't drunk the beer, have you?
Someone said I could have one.
you can have a beer. Well, we can all have a beer. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I'm Mark Windows. This has been Windows on the World, and we'll see you very, very soon. We've got goodbye from Max, Mona, Jonathan, and the effervescent Spizz.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you soon on Windows on the World.